Welcome back to another episode on Oak and Rock Fatherhood. As always, I'm your host, Zachary Small, joined today by Gabriel. We are sitting here, Anthony and I, sitting down. Special guest Gabriel coming onto the show, first-time guest. Gabriel, welcome to Oak and Rock Fatherhood.
Thank you so much for having me.
For those who don't know, Gabriel is a registered behavioral technician, a teacher. He goes by the Indomitable Black Man on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. He's the author of the book, This is Parenting. And importantly to this discussion, Gabriel is an active voice speaking on behalf of children. You see, kids can't speak up for themselves. They're considered second-class citizens. So it's on adults to speak out for them. And as we look to check our peers, we can improve what's coming down the pipeline to kids. And Gabriel is one of the men doing that. So Gabriel, welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to this discussion. As anybody who's tuned in before knows, Anthony and I, we are working on the peaceful parenting angle. We're working to help bring kids in and show them the respect they deserve, and to find other individuals such as yourself doing the same. It's incredible. I'd love to get it together, remove the taboo away from talking parenting. And so if there's anything I missed about what it is you're doing, please let people know now.
That's pretty much it. I have always been great with kids. I've always worked with kids. I love kids. And a lot of times they don't have an advocate. They don't have somebody who's going to be in their corner and recognize why kids do the things they do. We get mad at kids for basic child appropriate behavior, but a lot of us have always been told kids are better seen, not heard. And so we treat kids like we did. Basically, we haze kids. I feel like that's what we're doing for the first 18 years of their lives. We're hazing them. And so it's kind of time out for that, because a lot of the issues that we see in adults now they start off when they're kids. If we want to end a lot of the crap that we have now, let's start off when they're kids. So that's kind of just what I try to do. I try to get people to think about a different perspective of raising kids, thinking about how our actions in their childhood can affect their adulthood mentality and personality.
You know, in the last page of your book, you talk about the way we fix the future is by investing in the youth today. So if we invest in the youth in our present, they're going to go forward and make tomorrow and beyond better. And so
Absolutely.
It's frustrating, though, when you see it, and this isn't something Anthony and I have run into. You see, hey, if you just speak to kids with respect, you give them that freedom to be children, pretty much. You give them that freedom, they develop so much more healthily. And when you see parents coming down heavy-handed, trying to toughen them up for the world, and it's breaking the child's spirit, it's frustrating. And one of the issues Anthony and I have run into, and I saw on a recent TikTok of your own, the whole honey versus vinegar approach, we've been a lot of vinegar. There's a lot of frustration coming at people and a little confrontational. And you made a video recently talking about how when you started out, I believe it was on TikTok, you started out just calling people out, calling them to the carpet, throwing the challenge out there. And recently you've shifted your approach to that. And so for Anthony and I, but anybody else out there that's living peacefully and wanting to better help others who aren't there yet, how have you found a way to shift your perspective on better communication to help people see what it is they're doing to these children?
That's a really good question. The phrase hurt people always comes to mind. Because I work in behavior, I always understand that there is an antecedent or a cause of a behavior, the behavior itself, and then a consequence. And those consequences can be the behavior can be reinforced or punished. They can increase or decrease based on the environment or how people respond to it. So a lot of times the negative behaviors that we see have been reinforced by how we handle that behavior. If I know that with kids, I can't do that the same approach as authoritarian parents and expect a different outcome. That's not how that works. I have to treat them the same way I would treat a child who's acting out. You're acting out because this stuff is happening in your environment and you're responding out of that. So I need to change the environment and change my approach to how you're dealing with that behavior, and that'll change the behavior overall. If I change the antecedent and the consequence, the behavior is going to change. So I had a conversation with the situational therapist, actually. Great guy. And he really helped me see that I was angry. And a lot of the anger that I have, I come to realize is from my parents, because that's how my parents were. And once I started unpacking that, I was like, oh, snap. I'm really angry. I mean, we don't want to see parents hit their kids. We have science that shows that it's not going to do anything. It's wrong. We know morally it's wrong. If you're hitting your kid and you feel bad about it, that's because it's wrong. You shouldn't be wanting to do that. But because it's a normalcy, we've allowed the abuse to be normal. This is what we're just going to do. And so it's unfair for me as somebody who knows something different, who has the resources available to him, to hold somebody else to that same standard, knowing that they don't know. So it's kind of like getting mad at a kid who doesn't know. I can't get mad at a kid because he doesn't know. I can give him the guidance in order to know. So that's what I've had to start trying to do.
Wouldn't you say, though, that we should get angry if we see a parent abusing their kid? And I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that we should, like Zac was saying in the opening, we should speak up, right? We should have a voice about what's right and what's wrong. So you mentioned that there's studies, that specifically there's a lot of studies on spanking that have been done in the last few decades. And why do you think that so many parents ignore these studies? So many parents don't want to hear how there's no good results from spanking their kids, and it's only negative or adverse effects. Why do you think that happens?
Well, the first reason is because, one, it's normalized. This is what we grow up with. Now, I can't speak 100% for the white community, but I can speak definitely for the Black and Indigenous community, the BIPOC community, Black and Brown. And it's a part of the culture. Spanking your kid is cultural. You whip your child's behind. That's just what you do. As when it comes to like the different studies, a lot of people don't read it because the science hasn't caught up. The society hasn't caught up with the science. So you'll have a lot of people who can't read that well. Like, if we're honest, most of the people who spank are generally the baby boomers, right? The baby boomers were raised by the generation before them, where there was still a lot of illiteracy. Most of the people in the country, and I found this out last year in one of my education classes, most Americans have a 7th grade reading comprehension level. Whoa. So if you were to give a scientific peer-reviewed article to somebody of that literacy level, do you really think they're going to understand it? It's just going to seem like some stuff that some bigwig is saying. They can come up with, pick a conspiracy, or they'll say, well, there's too much gray area. What do I do when my kid isn't getting ready for school and I'm about to be late for work? I have to spank them. They don't know that they don't know. They're not going to find the research. They're not going to see all the areas that they can make and prepare for. I was talking to a lady. She's a mutual of mine. She made a video. I'm sure y'all seen it. She said that gentle parenting is privileged parenting. Yep. And a lot of people got on her about it. But honestly, it is. Like, growing up, my mom was a single mother raising 2 kids. And we had to be places, and she didn't have time to sit here. All right, Gabe, now I know you want to do this, but you can get choice between doing this or doing that. What do you want to do? We didn't have time. We had to go. And so she had to give some papows every now and again. It is what it is. There are so many different areas that I don't think everybody can see their blind spots, that even us getting angry can't see. And we should be getting angry at the fact that, people are hitting kids. Don't hit kids. But I think there is still that gray area where things are happening that we're not aware of, and we still have to take in human error and people still learning and parenting as a practice into account before we just, get out in the streets with pitchforks and, torches talking about something. We got to give grace where grace is due.
I like how everyone has the same voice for like the mob. Go get them. But so you brought something up there that's interesting. When I look at pain being inflicted upon children, I look at the source. We did a podcast with Brendan Murata, and he was talking about the trauma virus, where it comes from and where it goes. And he's talking about a lot of European countries, kids were kind of in the way. So they would send them off to wet nurses. They would send them out to whatever, let the orphanage raise them, come back. And those kids didn't know their parents. And so they viewed their children to be annoyances. Fast forward, it keeps on going out that way. And then we get to the Industrial Revolution. And now kids are just meant as labor. Kids come in, we have a job to do. Hit them, they'll do their job right. Just like factory workers getting beaten. And then that carries on. You did a podcast, I believe it was on Mission Parenting, where he talks about toxic parenting in the Black community. That might have been with the situational therapist. But so when we look at where it goes with the European and where they were going with kids, you look at the Black community, and they always say the statistics are higher. Do you think that has to do with the Black community being brought to America, the trauma they experienced through slavery, and that was just carried on and is passed down? I didn't get to listen to the second half of that podcast, but just where you're going with that, how do you think that can be addressed with it being as deeply ingrained in that's recent history, relatively, if we're looking at it, that's recent history. So that's healthy, strong virus of trauma. How the heck do you get that out of a community that experienced so much?
That's a really good question. Dr. Stacey Patton, who actually the situational therapist, talks about a lot in her book, Spare the Child, Why Whoopings Won't Save Black America. It's talking specifically about how there's no evidence of spanking in the Americas or in Africa prior to colonization. You won't find it. Yet we know that there was corporal punishment for children all throughout European history. They were considered just a beast of burden, something that you don't have good prophylactics. So we just had a kid and dang it, now we got to raise it. We might as well put them to work kind of mentality. Like they were nailing kids' ears to posts if they were caught stealing or lying. Like there's it's more than just a European thing. It's a Christendom European thing in the sense that they mistranslate or misinterpret scripture and use it as a basis for which they abuse, pick a person, specifically kids. And when I bring up this information to Black people specifically, and I'm telling them, hey, you hitting your kids is anti-Black. You hitting your kids is anti-Latino. You hitting your kids is anti-Indigenous. They look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, well, let's look at it. Let's look at what happened to slaves, and let's look at what happens to when you're beating your child. Like the slave master would all the way. Sorry, that's my dog. The slave master would 100%.
It's a family-friendly show.
Okay. He would absolutely strip a slave naked. Parents do the same thing, especially in the Black community. You would make them stay where they cannot run, which is against a human's natural instinct. The instinct is to fight, flight, or fawn. You're preventing them from doing those things, and then you're beating them. You're beating them, and they can't necessarily comprehend why you're doing it. You're shaming them while you're doing it, which is why you're making them take off their clothes. The similarities are too close together. It's like outlined all throughout Willie Lynch. And so, hold on just a second. This dog is biting me.
No, it's all good. Like I said, I'm going to jump on that one a little bit too.
Okay.
You know, we have an issue with a lot of people who speak about kids being second-class citizens. And I brought it up multiple times. When you're talking about certain communities, well, this is going to toughen them up. It's going to make them stronger. White kid, Latin kid, Black kid, it doesn't matter what type of kid it is. Any kid that's going through that is going to be less than. They're not going to be their optimal selves. And what drives me crazy, and Anthony, this has come up multiple times, is, well, what we're doing, what we're talking about, allowing them to be more free to make their own choices and do these things. We're talking about it in a sense that, you know, especially when it comes down to like government control, you're telling your kid, you cannot do this. You must listen to me. I'm the authority. Now, whether that goes back to slavery of I'm the authority, I'm the master, or that goes towards industrial, I'm the boss and you're the employee, or it goes all the way out to I'm the government and you're just a citizen. If you're telling kids early on, you must blindly obey this authority or I will hurt you, then they are going to become government drones that are going to be used the rest of their lives. And so when you're saying it's anti-Black, if we're looking to build up the Black community and raise yourself, then you can't oppress them. If you're raising up white kids, Spanish kids, American kids saying, hey, we want a free life, then don't tell them, do what I said because I said so. No, explain to them. Here is why. And any government or any authority that's over you telling you what to do, they need to answer to you as well. But your kid will never develop that muscle if you beat it out of them when they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
No,
As you were saying.
there's a lot to that, right? If we are always controlling our kids, they're not going to have freedom. They're not going to be free to fail, free to make mistakes. And that's really how we learn. So when you see this trauma passed down, there's so many young people who don't have emotional skills to succeed in life. They're very void of it, right? They don't have normal comprehension of how to communicate, how to negotiate with people. And these are tools that you need if we're going to have a free country or free market. You need this to succeed, right? Communication, conversation is the greatest tool you can give your kid to succeed, You don't have to make them tough. You don't have to beat them down to make them stronger. We need them to learn how to navigate the world in a way where they can relate to other people. They can have mutual exchange. They can experience freedom. And if we don't give that to them as kids, they're going to suffer, right? They're not going to know what that's like. They're not going to know which path to go down.
Absolutely. In that same vein, yesterday I got into an altercation outside of one of my favorite restaurants. This guy, apparently I was driving too close to him. I was like 2 car lengths behind, but he starts brake checking me. I get to where I'm going. He's flipping me off. He got my, I pulled up next to him, not really thinking much of it. He reaches out his window and grabs my side mirror and just like bends it. And I'm like, my only question was why? Like, what are you accomplishing by doing this? I continue driving, but he's following me. So I finally get to my destination. He blocks me in and he gets out of his car and he's this buff guy walking up to my car, acting all mean and stuff like that. And I'm like, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you doing? You're coming to my car. And the reality of it, and what I want people to understand, is when you're only taught to react to something versus respond to something,
yes,
you're missing a litany of things that could take place. One, you're walking up to my car. You're walking up to my car in a threatening manner. You blocked my way in. That's hostile already. I'm in Florida. That's a stand your ground law. At that point, all it takes is a reach over and you're 6 feet under. Past that, if you come up to me and hit me, I'm going to sue. You hit my car, I'm going to sue. So either way, it's a lose-lose for you, but you're not focused on that. You're trying to make yourself feel better about yourself. You're upset and you're allowing your emotions to cloud your judgment. You're showing off for your girlfriend who's in the car. There are so many things going on. And I have to be in control and be like, okay, this dude is clearly upset. What are you upset about, sir? What do you think you're going to accomplish by getting in my face and trying to attack me? What are you actually going to get out of this? He fixed my my side mirror. He got back in his car. He came back up. He still got mad, pushed my door closed and everything. And I was just like, what? You're not doing anything to harm me. Like, this isn't.
So how do you think his childhood was?
Immature. Clearly, already, I can let you know that he has a bad relationship with his parents. He was grown up. He grew up in an environment where his dad was very reactive rather than responsive.
Yes.
In addition to that, he's probably of the mindset that he's an alpha in which he has to control everything. That's what makes him masculine. His identity is based in the masculinity he exudes. I don't have to exude masculinity. I am who I am, masculine already. And even if I wasn't, I'm already secure because I had to learn what that looks like. I had to learn how to control my emotions. And what a lot of people don't understand, and I say this all the time, emotions are indicators, not dictators. You should not be basing a decision off of your emotions. Your emotions let you know of things that you need to be aware of. I'm upset that this person is driving too close to me. What can I do to communicate this frustration? Even if you would have pulled over, blocked me in and said, hey, I didn't like what you were doing. That was aggressive to me. Next time, please don't do that because you can harm somebody. I would have been like, bro, I am sorry. I didn't mean to. I understand my bad. But that's not what he did. And that's the result of what happened. So I need parents to really understand that this is what you're teaching your kids. When they get older, this is the life they're going to live. And if you're being reactive as a kid and they grow up seeing that and that's normalized, your kid can get hurt doing some stuff like that. Because I'm from Atlanta, you hop out in certain places trying to get all upset at a driver. That's it. You gonna get got.
Yeah, the respond react thing is really big. What I talk to a lot of fathers, right? Instead of always reacting to a behavior or a misbehavior, learn how to respond better.
You got to save the dog, baby.
Yep. But no, and it's, when you think about it, what Gabriel just described is a man who lacks that emotional regulation because he was always reacted to as a kid. And if you've, if you read the book, No Drama Discipline, they talk about how when a child is in a heightened state, when they're having a tantrum or they're misbehaving or they're lashing out, you don't engage them on that level, right? You don't get reactive. What you do is you want to respond in a way that lets them know it's okay, that they can learn to regulate their emotion and become calm. And then when they are calm, when they've calmed down, when they've had a minute to think about what was going on, that's when you engage them and teach the lesson. So I think what you were describing, Gabriel, is what we see very common, especially in men, grown men, where there's not enough emphasis on men taking care of themselves, men really learning about their emotions, their understanding of why they think what they think. And I wouldn't say how to control the emotions, but how to realize that those emotions do not define who you are. You don't have to be angry, right? And if you do get that way, take a minute, take some time for yourself, right? In your book, you spoke about self-care. And I really think that if a lot of fathers, especially parents, but especially fathers, if they took the time to care about themselves, if they did things that were good for them, educated themselves, read books on parenting. I'm always beating that drum, right? It's one of probably the most important things you can do. And there's a million parenting books out there. Another thing is take care of your physicality, lift weights, eat healthy, be strong. And I think when we do that, we allow ourselves some self-empathy and we can start to heal from the trauma that happened to us in childhood. And then we can pass that down to our kids. The more calm we can be, the more patience we have, we see it in our kids, right? It reflects to us. Kids are mirrors. So like you said, that guy who came out and lashed out at you, that was just an adult temper tantrum.
Yeah, the way
it really was.
Go ahead.
There's a concept called the continuum of arousal, where it's basically when you have a person who, like a child, and they are used to normalized abuse, they're eventually going to get on a continuum where it's going to go from calm to escalating to an apex and then a decline. If they're in that cycle for so long where this is all they know, they're going to go on that journey, that continuum, and they're not going to come back down to calm. They're always going to be in a survival primal state in which anything that triggers them will revert them back to their childlike state or wherever they experience that trauma until it's processed and they'll stop developing in that area. So I can only imagine that this dude grew up in that environment, stopped developing in that area, never learned how to process it, and thought that not processing is masculine, is the sign of a man. A man has to be strong and violent. A man can be strong and violent if he needs to, but a man can also be calm under pressure and speak about what's frustrating him, communicating that, as opposed to just resorting to fisticuffs automatically. So that's what I had to say about that.
Well said.
No, it's very well said. And it plays to the point that we talk a lot about. A lot of men will say, I'm a good dad, I'm a strong dad, I'm the leader of the family. And then we'll say, come on, Oak and Rock and talk fatherhood. Well, I can't talk about it. Wait a minute. You're not willing to have the conversation on this, but you're a strong, focused individual. It's not truth. It's an appearance. They want to look strong, but not be strong. We talk with the react versus respond. That's a great example. But something too, and this is, I kind of have an issue with this, and I would love your input on it, Gabriel. When I look at kids who are hit, I see them go through somewhat of a phase of, I will never be like that. Or at least I was spanked growing up. I thought that, and now I'm a peaceful parent. So I followed through on my promise to myself. And I remembered what it was like to be that kid. And earlier you said the same thing. I remember what it was like to be a kid. I would say Anthony could probably fall into this as well, in that you hang on to that. And maybe some men can do it and some don't. But a lot of these men, when they grow, they reach a point. I don't know if you can hear my dogs, but now they're going nuts. My wife just got home. So they reach a point to where they forget that. And they were hit for so long and they were abused. They were second-class citizens for so long that once they make it and they're an adult, now it's finally their turn. And so if somebody drives too close, I'm going to show them. They have kids of their own. I'm going to show you. I'm finally in charge. And so what you were saying about, the alpha, they finally feel like now it's time to exert my control over everything and do to them what was done to me. And they're just passing on that pain cycle. So the poverty cycle, the obesity cycle, there's this trauma cycle. And they're continuing it forward, not even realizing you forgot that young man or young woman who was saying, I will never be like that. And they turn into the monster they said they wouldn't become because they're so desperate to have control over something. And I think that plays in so well to what you were saying about if we want a better future, we've got to help these kids now or they're going to turn into the tyrants of tomorrow.
Yeah, because the first thing when you're just hitting your kid, you're not actually teaching your kid anything. Everybody's under this mindset that pain is the best teacher. It's not. It'll teach you how to survive something, maybe, but that's not teaching you how to process something. That's not teaching you how to not do the same mistake over again. That's not doing anything. And you're going to stop developing in that area. If you were to take the time to sit down with your kid, hey, this is what you did. Do you understand why you did that? This is what can happen if you continue to do that. Let's figure out what we can do differently next time. What could you do differently next time? Getting them to critically think about their actions is the best course of action, as opposed to just the hitting. You're only going to breathe the same amount. And it's hard because you can't process it, you can't find other alternatives. So when you get older, that's all you know. You don't know of an alternative. It's just that you get
That's
frustrated.
Your default behavior. That's your default response.
It's the default response. You react based on what you've experienced your whole life. My parents whooped me and I came out fine. No, you didn't. You're doing the same thing to your kid. You're doing the same thing to your kid because it was done to you. That's all you know. So you're doing it to your kid. And going back to the slavery thing, honestly, because a lot of the Black kids had to be raised that way. They had to be raised to blindly submit. There was no room for any type of freedom. They had to do it. That was for them. That's not for now. We can't do the same thing because there's more freedom. Kids can have more say in something. The concept of trying to have the respect, the concept of beating your kid into submission, that no longer has a say. That no longer has a play. Our lives are not on the line as much anymore. So it has to end. There has to be other alternatives that we're doing. There has to be a processing of the frustration and the trauma so that it doesn't repeat with the next generation, because 9 times out of 10, it will recycle.
Yeah. Can we go back to that for a second? I just connected a few dots. You know, if you were a Black child and your Black parents and they were slaves and whatever was going on down south, whatever time frame, if the parent smacked the shit out of the kid so they didn't do the thing that they knew the master would come down much harder on, they were sparing their kid a much more severe punishment. I did not put those dots together until you just said that. They were doing that. When you say I've hit you out of love, in that controlled, very specific situation, they're basically saying, you can't, if I'm going to hit you and hurt you to do this, so that dude doesn't.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's exactly what was happening.
Never evolved. We just never evolved from it, is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We kept the same rules even though the environment changed.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Because there was never a time, because it goes even past slavery. It goes into Jim Crow, well into Jim Crow, because we see that you could still be a Black kid and cops could pull you over for stop and frisk, or they could pull you over for a vagrancy law, or they could pull you over for quote unquote drugs, and you're incarcerated, or you're shot and killed, or pick something. And so we were raised, my generation and the generations before were raised that, no, I'm doing this because I'm trying to protect you. I'm doing this because you have to submit. You have to be in compliance with the police because you could die. You have to be in compliance with me because you could go to jail. Now, the fallacy in that is I guarantee you can look in any prison and ask any inmate, Black, white, indigenous, whatever, they all got their butts whooped.
Oh, yeah.
Yet they all wound up in prison. I guarantee you Michael Brown got his butt whooped. George Floyd got his butt whooped. Sandra Bland got his butt whooped. It did not save you. That's what we got to focus on. It didn't save you. What could save you is communication. What could save you is teaching the child how to assess the situation, think rationally, and then operate from there. I mean, granted, that didn't save Philando Castile, but more often than not, it'll save a life.
So when you look at it from that angle, would you not say that peaceful parenting is the first wave of resistance towards the masters? It's the first time to turn it around, because you're looking at the Black community and there was literal slavery. You look at the white community and several other communities, even modern communities, and it's the government. The government is the master. I'm toughening you up for the world so this doesn't happen to you. I'm going to hit you because you got to listen to the cops. You've got to listen to your boss. You've got to listen to the politician. And we saw it big time with COVID. It really amplified things. But this is the first time I tell my kids, my kids ask me why. And I was in the military. I came from a very strict household and I changed everything. Ask me why. I'll explain it to you. If you say no, let's talk about where the disconnect is. We negotiate, we talk all the time. So that way, when they go out in the world, they ask everybody why. They don't blindly follow shit. You know, and so my expectation, or I guess that's my expectation for them. But my thought now, after what you just said, this is the first time we're seeing a wave of resistance. We're not going to beat our kids to blindly obey anybody. So while peaceful parenting is almost an act of war against the masters of modern current day.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, it gets even deeper than that, because if we all raised our children that way, can you imagine what government would look like?
There would
Can
be
you
no
imagine empathy amongst leaders? Everybody would be empathetic. Everybody would understand when things are wrong. Everybody would know how to communicate. You have a war going on right now, from miscommunication, greed, from overcompensation. You have all of these things, broken identities, hurt, pain, all this kind of stuff. With gentle parenting, with peaceful parenting, with authoritative parenting, you can have a world where people understand people. And it's not so far-fetched a thing to have. It would be great if we had it. But of course, if we had that, then that means that the people in power won't have the same power that they want, in which case they're probably not going to allow it to happen, which is why everybody's so pushing of kids just need to do what we say and not what we do. Corporal punishment is still legal in the States. Like, come on.
Yeah, don't get them going on that one.
Hey, I was just before we hit record, I was talking to Anthony. Before I die, that's got to change. That's like a life mission of mine. Get it out of the public school system. Get that out of the country.
Yeah,
please. A lady tried to lobby that, and one of the representatives was like, "Oh, well, my wife's a teacher, and she says that spanking kids is the only way I can get them to listen." Have you tried a different approach?
Have you tried talking to them?
Kids
Come talk to Gabriel. We got a teacher saying the opposite. Come talk to one that's doing it right.
Classroom management is my jam. Like, if there's a behavior, I want to work with emotional behavioral disorders. I love those kinds of kids, because all they just need is love and communication. They need
connection.
Somebody to teach them. That's it. That's all they need. That's all they need. Kids want to be heard.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, most parents don't listen. That's the big problem. Most adults don't listen. And I would say that, to go off the government rant with Zac, a lot of parents they use authority. And even though it doesn't get the results, right, there's still parenting from authority, and the kids are still not listening. So everything has to get, the level has to get higher and more strict and more restrictive and more painful, and the punishments have to ensue. Where, like we were saying, if you just parent with equality, if you treat your kids as equal, not saying that they can go and drive your car at 5 years old, but if you give them the same equal rights, human rights, then your kids will listen. They'll feel heard. You can listen to them. I mean, they'll understand what's going on, rather than themselves always being reactive. And you brought up earlier about the fight or flight in kids. And I think it's important to note that when you're a child and you're in a home, those are the two reactions, right? You're either going to fight or you're going to run. And kids can't do either, because they're dependent on the parents, right? No child is ever going to really physically beat up their parent for assaulting them, and they can't leave because they depend on the parent. So they're in a really tough spot, if you think about it, right? It's almost like you're trapped in this prison, and you have to communicate with the prison guards in a way where they stop abusing you so severely, and they give you food and they treat you. So it's almost like we're treating our kids like prisoners.
Yes. And I like to add on to that, the school to prison pipeline is literally it's the same thing. You're treating kids like inmates. You're treating kids like a number. You're shoving them through a system. The same thing is happening at home. You only want blind submission. That's what you're going to lead to. And you wonder why incarceration rates keep going higher. Look at what you're setting your kids up for. They're not learning anything. They're in the way. They're little rugrats that you just want to take care of. They're a liability. That's literally what kids boil down to. They treat kids as a liability. You're a liability. You're in the way until you turn 18. Once you turn 18, get out of my house so I can continue living my life, because I didn't wear a prophylactic, or I didn't think it was going to be this hard, or pick something. Like, if we're honest, a lot of kids are out here, they were not planned, and that's okay. But that doesn't give you a right to take out your frustration and your inability to plan on these kids. And
if you make a law or a rule, nothing is fixed, right? Just because you made a rule in your home doesn't mean you actually parenting all you're doing
Not
is
at
using
all.
your authority. So, and
Mhm.
that's something me and Zach, we talk about all the time is fathers, instead of using your authority, you have to connect with your kids, right? You have to teach them. You have to be a leader in the home. You really have to guide them through the process. You have to take the
Mhm.
time. So make sure they understand why it is they're doing what they're doing instead of punishing the misbehavior. And a lot of parents, they get upset with their kids. They take it as a personal attack when their kids act a certain way, right? They lash out and, oh, my kid doesn't listen to me, right? I have to hit them. I have to spank them. And you brought up hitting before, so I want to get into the spanking conversation a little bit more. And one thing that stands out to me all the time, and I have a lot of useless conversations on Twitter about spare the rod, spoil the child.
Mhm.
A lot of people have that ingrained in their mind that some way that God wants you to hit your kid so they won't be spoiled, so they won't be bad. What do you tell parents, or what do you tell anybody when you get approached with that?
So first things first, I'm actually a youth pastor. I
Okay.
speak Hebrew as well. I've studied biblical Hebrew for quite a while. So the exegesis of scripture is my jam. Like I will always jump on it. To say one, spare the rod, spoil the child. First off, we have to recognize that's from a poem by a guy in the 1600s that had really nothing to do with kids like that at all. That's first. Second off, the scripture that they're trying to quote usually is Proverbs, where it talks about he who spares the rod hates his child. But we have to recognize that the word for rod is shevet, which refers to a shepherd's rod. And if you want to say that you need to beat your child, if you think that gives you permission to beat your child, you have to look in Psalms 23, where David says, your rod and your staff comfort me. Who in God's green earth is comforted by a rod and a staff if you're beating them with it? What kind of mess? They're not. You're not supposed to beat your kid. Even the part of the Bible where it says, strike your kid, or strike, I think it's the young man with a rod, it won't kill him. It's not talking about actually hitting your kid with it, like to beat them. Goading is what is more likely it's talking about. Goading, if you have a sheep, or in this case, this husky who is very furry, hitting them isn't going to do much anyway. Trying to hit my dog, me and my dog wrestle and fight a lot, and he does not feel pain like that. He'll run into a wall, and the fur blocks a lot of the pain that he would feel. So hitting him wouldn't really do anything. What does is poking him, like I'm going to do right now. Poke him in the side, and he'll feel that more than he would feel like somebody hitting him. Goading, as in guiding, like poking them in the side so they go one way or another way, is what that's talking about. Guide your child. Don't hit your child. And Proverbs is poetry. It's not supposed to be taken literally. It's poetry. It's a series of illustrations and imagery and turns of phrase. Like that's what I tell parents.
I really wish I had you like on speed dial for when all these people hit me up about this, because I catch it the same thing as Anthony. Man, these people are showing up everywhere. I'm also very impressed with your ability to navigate these questions while handling a dog. It is solid multitasking we got going on here, and I dig it, man. You didn't miss a beat.
Man.
That's cool. I wanted to shift gears a little bit to your work, specifically your work on TikTok. You've blown up. Obviously, people are sitting there, they're watching, they're listening, they're following. Why do you think that is? On such a taboo subject that people don't want to hear, how have you made it entertaining? You've got people talking about parenting in a joking manner, sometimes serious. That's not an easy thing to do considering the topic.
I think one, it's because I'm a black guy with locks. I'm an actor, I'm a performer, professional. I joke around, I kid around, but in the same case, I'm just real. Like I try to be as transparent as possible. I didn't expect to blow up. I actually wanted my TikTok to be on giving college readiness tips for young adults. That's what I wanted to do. Teach them how to survive as an adult. And then I just made one video as a response because I was like, he's doing this all the way wrong. Why would he do this? And then it just blew up. I try to speak matter-of-factly. I try to speak in a way that people can understand, regardless of your intellectual level. So I'm guessing that's why. Ooh. Ooh.
That's good. I think that goes back to our discussion on honey versus vinegar. I don't know what just broke in your room, so I'm just gonna roll.
My dog hit his head on my glass desk.
All right. So I think that goes to that honey versus vinegar. You do deliver it in a manner where, like, I'm watching it, I know what's going on, I'm pissed off at the video, but I see your breakdown, like, that's pretty funny. You know, it's the best comedians can deliver the most brutal truth in a hilarious way. And so you learn something, and you're like, damn, that's true. Wait a minute. What did he just say? And I think that's what you're doing. I really like it because that's going to reach people that, like we were saying earlier, I'm confrontational to this because I do let it bother me, and it comes across in my message. I'm like, guys, this is not helping kids. That's not as funny as like pointing out a video and be like, hey, now who do you think that helped? Totally different delivery. They're much more receptive to the latter. And I think you're doing quite well with it. And so it's great to see it grow. But
Well, thank you.
yes, sir.
Even though
And
it's
the butt isn't to detract from that at all. The butt is actually to amplify. You know, where do you see yourself going with this? Continuing to spread the message? You know, what's your vision here when it comes to the parenting side of the house?
Same thing, really reaching as many people as I possibly can. TikTok has kind of halted my progress and my growth for a little while. That's fine. I just really want to empower as many people as I can. Even if people come across the video and they're just like, wow, okay, that's insightful. Or no, that dude is stupid. I don't know what he's talking about. You still heard what I said. You still have some idea of what I'm saying. That's enough for me. What I would love to see is more interaction. I do parenting consultation as well. I've had a lot of my parents inbox me, hey, I need help with such and such. So I had to create a whole like aspect of my business to accommodate just that. I love it. Most of the parents aren't bad parents. They just need tweaking in a couple areas and they're fine. And they always wind up crying on the phone to me, but that's neither here nor there. I just want to do a good job. You're fine. Like, okay, you didn't give your child some juice. It's fine. But I would love to see more interaction with parents, trying to utilize a lot of the resources I provide, utilizing the resources that other gentle parenting coaches and experts provide. There's so many people. It's a whole community. There's no reason why they're not using it. And so your approach works because you're going to reach people with that approach. My approach works as I'm going to reach people with this approach. And I don't think there's any like one size fits all kind of thing. I think it's just who the niche audience is at the time. You're going to reach somebody. And if I can just help one kid change their life, that's a lineage of kids that are going to break a cycle. That's not just one person. That's a nation of 100%. People that's coming after them. So if I can just be that one, if I can just reach that one person to rethink how they're raising their child and that child grows up to be healthy, that right there, that's
yes, sir.
They grow up to resist authority is what you mean.
Oh yeah. Free thinking children that can operate independently. And that's the goal. We should be raising kids to be independent, self-sufficient thinkers. That's the goal.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
Gabriel, we've got links to your book. We've got links to your Instagram, your YouTube. Is there anything you want to share before we wrap this one up? And specifically for those who want to reach out, connect with you, get maybe more insights or talk parenting, what's the best way for them to go about it? What's that closing message?
My website, actually, my business website is massevideo.com. That's MASSEVIDEO.com. That's my professional website. That's where I do parenting consultations. That's where I do tutoring. That's where I can look over IEPs, FBAs, all that kind of stuff. Or you can just reach out to me at Gabriel@massevideo.com. Beautiful. Just don't call me Collect.
Cool. All right. Anthony, what you got?
Yo, nothing, man. Gabriel, I appreciate you coming on. This has been excellent. I love your content. Highly recommend your book. It's a good read, very to the point, clear, concise, and it really breaks down the different types of parenting. I think it's a good value to help parents who are starting that want to make that change, right? The change to help the world, heal the world. So I highly recommend it, and grateful for you coming on, man. Thank you.
Of course, absolutely. Can I just say, I want everybody to know, if you purchase my book, just please do not think it's a cure-all for your kid. It's not meant to do that. It's not magic snake oil.
It's good.
It's just an overview of what authoritative parenting looks like and give you a new perspective on parenting. That's all I wanted to do. Just a taste.
That was awesome, man. And again, when you get that book, which you should do, I'll be buying my copy today. Don't just read it, apply it. Don't just listen to this podcast. Apply the information. Improve your relationship. Things will not fix with your child until you fix your relationship with your child through the actions you have with your child. It's all about the action. It's what you do. Now, a lot of that stems from what you think. So you start with the book, you have the better thoughts, that leads to better actions, which leads to a better relationship. But if you don't act on any of this, you keep doing things the way they were, but now you know more, that doesn't fix anything. So take the advice and apply it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like, subscribe, do all that jazz. Gabriel, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. I appreciate you coming on to talk about this and continue to spread the good word. You know, this is what it's about. Normalizing the discussion, a family-friendly show where dogs make an appearance. Everybody makes an appearance. Every now and then it's Anthony's dogs, my kids. Who knows what it's going to be? But what I can tell you is this. All three of us are going to continue going forward to spread our message and be the change that we need to see in the world. And if we want it better tomorrow, we got to start changing ourselves to be better today. This has been another episode of Oak and Rock Fatherhood. Stay